The boardroom on the 32nd floor had windows so wide they made the city feel like a scale model. Glass towers, tiny cars, a river like a ribbon pulled taut. Inside, everything was polished. The table, the shoes, the language. A long screen at the far end displayed a render of the new corporate headquarters. An elegant sweep of steel and stone, a plaza that looked more like a museum forecourt than a front entrance. Beneath the image, a line of text glowed. Project Halcyon, Final Architect Presentation. Around the table sat men and women in tailored suits, tablets angled like shields. A few had coffees that smelled expensive. A few had smiles that didn't reach their eyes. At the head sat Victor Lang, a man whose voice rarely rose because the room always leaned toward him anyway. He had built the company from a gritty logistics startup into a technology empire. People called him visionary. People also called him difficult, usually when they thought he couldn't hear. Today, he looked unimpressed. "This is what you're giving me," Victor said, tapping a finger once on the table. The sound was quiet, but it carried. After 8 months. Across from him, a young project manager cleared her throat. Her name was Alina Pierce, and she had the strained brightness of someone who'd slept 3 hours a night for a week. "It's a cohesive concept," she began carefully. "The massing responds to the surrounding." Victor leaned back, eyes fixed on the render as if it had personally offended him. Cohesive. Response. These are words people use when they're trying not to say the truth. The room went still. Even the air conditioning seemed to lower its hum. Alina swallowed. "The truth is, it's a design that meets the brief. It's on budget. It hits the sustainability targets." Victor cut her off with a small wave, as if dismissing a fly. "Meeting a brief isn't why I'm spending $400 million. A consultant with silver hair tried to soften the edge. Victor, the team at... Victor's gaze snapped to him. "Don't say the firm's name like that's an argument." Silence again. Alina looked down at her notes, then up at the architect seated beside her, a man with fashionable glasses and a cardigan that cost more than Alina's rent. His posture was relaxed, but his jaw had tightened. "We can iterate," the architect offered. "If there's a particular..." Victor's hand came up again. This time, the gesture felt heavier. "No." The architect blinked. "No." Victor leaned forward slightly. "No more iterations. No more polishing the same mediocre idea until it shines enough to blind people into thinking it's good." A few people shifted, eyes darting toward one another, then quickly away. Victor's voice stayed calm, which somehow made it worse. "I want the real architect. The one who actually understands what this building should say." Alina felt her stomach drop. She'd heard rumors. Victor could smell insecurity like smoke. He could also humiliate someone without raising his voice. She tried, anyway. "He is the lead architect, sir." Victor's eyes moved across the table in a slow sweep. "Then why do I feel like I'm being sold something by committee?" The silver-haired consultant cleared his throat again. "We've had extensive charettes. Stakeholder feedback. A collaborative process." Victor's gaze returned to the render. "Collaboration is wonderful when someone is leading. What I'm seeing is compromise. And compromise makes buildings that look like they were designed by a focus group." Alina's fingers clenched beneath the table. She could feel her pulse in her wrists. Then a soft sound came from the doorway, the squeak of a cartwheel. Every head turned. A janitorial cart rolled into view, stocked with disinfectant, folded cloths, and a small bucket. Behind it walked an elderly man in a navy work shirt with a stitched name tag that read MR, Rutherford. His hair was white and close-cropped, his shoulders slightly stooped with age, but still sturdy. He moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who had spent decades doing work that had to be done no matter who noticed. He paused just inside the room, eyes taking in the crowded table, the screen, the CEO. For a half-second, it looked like he might back away. Alina braced for Victor to snap. "Meeting in progress." "Wrong floor. Get out." Victor didn't even have to speak. Someone else would do it for him. But Victor didn't look at the janitor as if he were an interruption. He looked at him as if he'd been expecting something. "Close the door, please," Victor said, not raising his voice. The elderly man glanced behind him, then gently reached back and eased the door shut. The click sounded like a gavel. A woman from legal frowned. Victor. Victor held up a finger, still watching the man. You can continue your route later, he said to the janitor. Or you can come in and take a seat. The room froze in a different way now. Not the hush of fear, but the tight disbelief of people trying to decide whether this was some kind of test. Mr. Rutherford didn't move right away. His gaze went to the screen, just a quick look at the building render, and then to the table. He didn't stare at anyone long. He didn't need to. He had spent years learning how to read a space without making it feel like he was reading the people inside it. I'm on the schedule for this floor, he said quietly. His voice had a softness that made people lean in without realizing it. But I don't want to disturb. Victor's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. You aren't. The cardiganed architect gave a thin laugh, as if to loosen the mood. This is highly confidential, he said, eyebrows lifted. We're discussing proprietary design documents. Victor finally looked away from Mr. Rutherford and turned his gaze to the architect. You're discussing them, he said. I'm not sure anyone else is. A couple of nervous chuckles died before they could become real. Alina's cheeks warmed. She couldn't tell if this was Victor being brilliant or Victor being cruel in an unpredictable way. Either option could ruin her week. Mr. Rutherford's hands rested on the card handle. His knuckles were thick with age. There were faint scars, the kind that came from physical work done long enough to stop counting the little injuries. Victor nodded toward an empty chair against the wall. Sit. Mr. Rutherford hesitated. The chair was far from the table, the kind reserved for assistants or interns who needed to be present but not seen. He moved toward it anyway, careful and steady, like he didn't want to make noise that would give anyone an excuse to complain about his presence. He sat with his back straight, hands folded loosely in his lap. Victor tapped his finger again. Now, he said, tell me what you think. There was a moment where the entire room seemed to stop breathing. Alina's eyes flicked to Mr. Rutherford, then to Victor, then to the screen. She expected Mr. Rutherford to blink in confusion, to say he didn't know what was going on. But Mr. Rutherford looked at the render again. Longer this time. His gaze traveled the curve of the roofline, the glass facade, the arrangement of columns. It wasn't the look of someone guessing. It was the look of someone measuring. I think, he said slowly, that it's pretty. The architect's shoulders loosened, as if he'd just won a point. The legal woman's frown deepened. Someone at the far end of the table hid a smile. Mr. Rutherford continued, still looking at the render. But pretty isn't the same as true. Victor leaned forward, elbows on the table. Go on. Mr. Rutherford's eyes narrowed slightly. You got a plaza that pushes people away. All that open stone. No shade. No places to sit that feel like they're meant for someone who isn't wearing a badge. The entrance is tall, but it's not welcoming. It's a mouth that looks like it's about to swallow you. The smiling stopped. The architect's head tilted in irritation, like he'd heard a critique from someone who hadn't earned the right to give it. Mr. Rutherford kept speaking, calm as ever. And the building itself, it's trying to look like success, like a trophy, but it doesn't say who built the success. It doesn't say who will be inside making it. It doesn't even say where it is. You could drop that building in 6 different cities, and it would pretend it belonged in all of them. Alina felt her throat tighten, not from fear this time, but from a strange rush. Those were words she'd thought, but never dared to say. The design had been too smooth, too safe. It had no fingerprints. The architect opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. With respect, he said, forcing a polite tone, the plaza is designed to be flexible for events. We've planned for. Mr. Rutherford looked at him kindly, which somehow made the architect flush. Events are fine, he said, but daily life is what gives a place its soul. Events are costumes. Daily life is skin. Victor's eyes glittered. And you know this how? Mr. Rutherford's gaze moved to Victor now, steady, unafraid. I've cleaned enough buildings to learn which ones people love, he said. You can tell by what they leave behind. Not trash. I mean signs, little things, notes on a bulletin board, a plant someone keeps alive, a chair that's been dragged to a corner because the sunlight falls there at 3 in the afternoon. A hush settled, not the hush of fear, the hush of being seen. Victor sat back slightly. What would you do instead? Mr. Rutherford looked at the render again, and for a moment Alina thought he might refuse. It wasn't his job. It wasn't fair to put him on the spot. It felt like a trap. But then Mr. Rutherford's hands unfolded, and he leaned forward just a little in his chair, like he was stepping into a familiar room. I'd start with the people, he said, not the brand. The architect made a small scoffing sound. This is a corporate headquarters, he said. It has to represent the company. Mr. Rutherford nodded. A company is people, he said. If you forget that, you get a monument. If you remember it, you get a home. Victor's mouth tightened, not in anger, but in something like concentration. Be specific. Mr. Rutherford lifted a finger, counting. You want a plaza? Give it trees. Real ones. Big enough that a person can stand under them and feel like the building is sharing the sky, not taking it. Put benches that aren't an afterthought. Place them where people will choose to sit, not where the symmetry looks good from above. He lifted a second finger. That entrance. Make a human scaled at the point of approach. Let the tall part rise behind it, sure. But at the ground, give people something that says, come in, not prove you belong. A third finger. And inside. Don't make everything glass just because glass looks like the future. Glass can feel like a fishbowl. People work better when they can breathe without feeling watched. The architect's face tightened. You're describing a community center, he said sharply. This is a high-performance environment. Mr. Rutherford looked at him again, still kind. You ever been in a hospital? He asked. The architect blinked. What? You ever had to wait in a hallway where the walls are too bright and the chairs are bolted down and the air smells like fear? Mr. Rutherford's voice remained gentle, but something in it sharpened, like a blade drawn slowly. That's high performance too. It's built for efficiency, not dignity. And nobody remembers it with love. Alina felt goose flesh rise on her arms. Victor's voice was quiet. And you've built something people remember with love? Mr. Rutherford's hands lowered. He looked down at them for a moment. I've helped, he said. The word hung there, helped. Not claimed, not boasted, just placed on the table like a stone. The legal woman shifted in her seat. Victor, this is not appropriate. We can't. Victor turned to her. We can't what? He asked calm. Listen. She hesitated. We can't take design direction from someone who isn't contracted, who isn't licensed, who... Mr. Rutherford raised a hand slightly, as if to excuse himself. She's right, he said. I'm not here to be trouble. Victor didn't look away from legal. You're saying we can't learn from someone unless their name is printed on the proposal. Legal's mouth opened, then closed. Victor turned back to Mr. Rutherford. What's your first name? He asked. A beat. Leon, Mr. Rutherford said. A few people's expressions shifted at hearing it. Some surprise, some discomfort. Names made people real. People didn't always like that. Victor nodded slowly. Leon, he said, you said you've helped. Helped what? Leon's gaze flicked to Alina, almost as if checking whether she wanted him to answer. Alina didn't know what to do with that look. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't seeking permission. It was a kind of courtesy. Leon looked back to Victor. A long time ago, he said, I drew buildings. The cardigan architect laughed, sharp and humorless. Everyone draws buildings, he said. Kids draw buildings. Leon didn't react. I drew them for a living, he said. Alina's heart thudded. She'd assumed Leon was a janitor who'd developed opinions from observation. The room had been ready to categorize him and move on. But his words disturbed that neat shelf. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. Where? Leon's mouth tightened, as if tasting something bitter. I work with a firm, he said. Small at first, then bigger. The architect rolled his eyes. Which firm? Leon's gaze met his, unflinching. Before I answer, he said, I'd like to ask you something. The architect blinked, thrown off. Excuse me. Leon gestured toward the render. When you designed that facade, he asked, what were you thinking about? The architect's cheeks reddened. The facade is an expression of... Leon waited patient. The facade is an expression of transparency, the architect said, voice tightening. Of openness. Of the company's commitment to innovation and... Leon nodded slowly. That's what the brochure says, he said. What were you thinking about? A tense silence. Alina watched the architect's hands. One of them clenched around a pen. I was thinking about the rhythm, the architect snapped. The verticality, the modulation of light. Leon nodded again. Better, he said. And were you thinking about the people who will have to clean it? A few heads turned sharply toward Leon. The architect scoffed. That's not. Leon's voice stayed gentle. Every line you draw is a promise to someone, he said. A promise of what their life will feel like inside it. And for some people, their life will be cleaning it. If you design something that takes an extra hour every day to maintain, you're stealing hours from a person who already gives their body away for work. The room felt different now, like the air had been rearranged. Alina realized she'd never heard anyone say that in a boardroom. Maintenance was an afterthought, a line item, a cost, not life. Victor's eyes stayed on Leon. Where did you learn to think like that? He asked. Leon looked at the windows, the city beyond, as if watching time move. When you're invisible, he said quietly, you notice what's real. The legal woman looked uneasy. The consultant looked fascinated. The architect looked offended. Victor's voice softened slightly, the first sign of anything like emotion. Which firm? He asked again. Leon hesitated, then said, I was with Turner & Glass. There was a ripple through the room. A few people exchanged looks. Turner & Glass was legendary, an old, prestigious architecture firm that had designed museums, civic buildings, international projects. Their name carried the weight of history. The architect frowned. That's impossible, he said. Turner & Glass hasn't hired. Leon's gaze stayed on him. Hired who? He asked softly. The architect's mouth snapped shut. Alina felt her chest tighten. She understood the question, the way it had been asked. It wasn't accusatory. It was simply revealing. Victor's eyes narrowed in a different way now. You work there as what? He asked. Leon's hands rested on his knees. A draftsman, he said, then a designer. The consultant leaned forward, incredulous. Do you have a license? Leon shook his head. I passed the exams later, he said, but I never got to use it. Victor's voice lowered. Why not? Leon's gaze dropped to his hands again. Because when I was ready to step into the light, he said, they decided the light wasn't meant for me. The silence was heavy enough to have a shape. The architect shifted in his chair. This is a distraction, he said. Victor, we're here to discuss a design package. We can't turn this into. Victor didn't look at him. Leon, he said, tell me a building you worked on. Leon's jaw tightened. A library, he said. On the east side. The consultant's eyes widened. The Eastgate Library? He asked. Leon nodded once. Alina's mind scrambled. Eastgate Library was beloved. It was also praised by critics. It had warm brick, generous windows, reading nooks that caught the afternoon sun. It was the kind of public building that made people feel dignified just by entering. The lead architect for Eastgate was, the architect began, then stopped. Leon's voice remained calm. The lead architect was a man whose name is carved on the wall, he said. He was good. He also took credit for other people's hands. Victor's gaze sharpened. And your hands were among them. Leon didn't answer directly. When the plans were presented, he said, my drawings were on the boards. My sections. My details. The way the light wells cut down into the children's room. That was my idea. I wanted the sunlight to fall like a blessing on the books. Alina's eyes stung unexpectedly. The cardigan architect scoffed again, more desperate now. Anyone can claim anything, he said. This is absurd. Where's your proof? Leon looked at him, then nodded slightly, as if he'd expected that question for decades. He reached into his work shirt pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. Slowly, he unfolded it. Alina leaned forward, trying to see. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a license. It looked like an old sketch. Leon held it up. Even from across the table, Alina could see the surety of the lines. It was a hand-drawn elevation of a building, brick and glass, and a distinctive canopy that matched the Eastgate Library entrance. In the corner, a signature. Not the famous one carved on the wall. A different one, smaller, careful. Leon's. The consultant's mouth fell open. That's the early concept, he whispered. I've seen a photo of that in an old exhibit. Victor didn't blink. How did you get that? He asked. Leon looked down at the paper, tenderness crossing his face. I kept it, he said simply. Some things you keep so you don't forget who you were. The legal woman's face had gone pale. She looked as if she could see lawsuits forming in the air. Victor's gaze stayed on Leon. Why are you a janitor? He asked. The question was blunt. It sounded cruel, but Victor's tone wasn't mocking. It was puzzled, like he'd encountered a math problem that didn't add up. Leon folded the sketch carefully and returned it to his pocket. Because life happens, he said. Because a man can't feed his family with pride. Because a door closed and another one opened, and I walked through it. The architect scoffed. This is a sob story, he muttered. Leon's head turned slowly toward him. Not angry, just present. You ever had to choose between your dream and your child's dinner? He asked. The architect's mouth opened. He didn't answer. Leon nodded, as if the silence was answer enough. Victor exhaled. Alina, he said, without looking away from Leon. How many times did we discuss user experience? Flow. Culture. Alina startled. Dozens, she said. Victor gestured toward the screen. And yet we didn't discuss the person who cleans the glass, he said, voice quiet. Or the person who sits on the bench. Or the person who arrives at 6 in the morning. We discussed the brand. He turned his gaze back to Leon. If you were designing this building, he said, what would it say? Leon looked at the render, as if he could see through it into a different possibility. It would say, he began slowly, that the company knows it's part of city, not above it, that the people inside are not machines, and the people outside are not strangers. He paused, then added, it would say that you don't have to be important to be welcome. The room stayed silent, but it was not the same silence as before. It was not fear. It was something like shame, and something like awe tangled together. Victor's voice was softer than Alina had ever heard it. Why didn't you tell anyone? He asked Leon. Why didn't you fight? Leon's eyes lifted. They were clear, tired, and steady. I did, he said. For a while. He leaned back slightly, as if the chair beneath him were suddenly the only thing holding up a memory. I was young, he said. I worked twice as hard because I knew I'd be measured twice as harsh. I stayed late. I redrew details until the lines felt like music. My mentor told me I had a gift. The architect rolled his eyes, but Leon didn't look at him. When the library project came, Leon continued, I poured myself into it. I went to the neighborhood meetings. I listened to mothers talk about safe places for their kids. I listened to older folks talk about how they wanted a room that didn't make them feel rushed. I asked the librarians where the afternoon sun hit the shelves. I learned the smell of dust and paper and hope. Alina found herself holding her breath. I brought the concept to my team, Leon said. They praised it. They used it. Then the presentations happened. My name wasn't on the boards. At first I thought it was a mistake. I asked. They said it would be handled next time. He smiled faintly, without humor. Next time is a word people use to keep you quiet. Victor's jaw tightened. I asked again, Leon said. I was told I should be grateful to be there, that I was getting experience, that I was lucky. The legal woman looked down at her notepad, as if the paper could hide her. One day, Leon said, I came into the office and my desk had been moved, not to a different corner, to a different floor. The floor where they kept people they didn't bring into client meetings. The floor where you heard the word support a lot. The consultant murmured, that's. Leon didn't finish the thought for him. I fought, he said. I filed complaints. I wrote letters. I had meetings with people who smiled and told me they understood. He paused, and something like pain tightened his face, quickly smoothed away. Then my wife got sick, he said quietly. Alina's chest tightened. She needed treatments, Leon continued. Insurance didn't cover enough. The firm's insurance did, but only if I stayed. So I stayed. I swallowed the anger because anger doesn't pay hospital bills. Victor's eyes were hard now, but not at Leon, at something invisible. When she died, Leon said, I couldn't stay in that building anymore. The lines on the paper started to feel like chains. And I had kids, too. They needed stability more than they needed me chasing a fight that had already stolen years. The architect shifted, uncomfortable now, but still defensive. This has nothing to do with this project, he said. Leon looked at him. It has everything to do with this project, he said softly. Because a building isn't just a building. It's a story about who matters. A long moment passed. Victor finally spoke. Leon, he said, if I asked you to help us, officially, would you? Leon's eyes widened just slightly, the first crack in his calm. He looked around the room, at the suits and the money and the careful faces. Then he looked at his hands. I'm old, he said. I'm tired. I'm not trying to be a headline. Victor's voice was steady. I'm not trying to make you one, he said. I'm trying to make a building that isn't a lie. Alina watched Leon swallow slow. His throat bobbed. I've been cleaning this building for 6 years, Leon said. I know where the leaks are. I know which corners people avoid because the lights flicker. I know which conference rooms feel like prisons and which ones feel like possibility. Victor nodded once. Then you know more about this company's real body than most people in this room, he said. The legal woman started to speak again, but Victor's gaze stopped her before words formed. Alina realized, with a strange clarity, that Victor didn't care about decorum right now. He cared about being right. And for once, being right meant listening. The architect leaned forward, voice tight with indignation. Victor, this is out of line, he said. I have a contract. My firm has delivered. You can't. Victor turned to him slowly. You're worried about your contract, he said. I'm worried about wasting a city block on a building that will age like a bad haircut. A few people choked back laughter. The architect's face reddened. You're undermining professional expertise. Victor's voice stayed calm. Professional expertise can still be shallow, he said. And I'm not undermining it. I'm questioning yours. The architect's eyes flashed. Based on what? The opinions of Janitor. Victor's voice sharpened just a fraction. Based on the fact that he just articulated more truth in 3 minutes than you've managed in 8 months, he said. The word janitor hung in the air like a slap. Several faces flinched. The architect looked satisfied for a split second, like he'd landed the insult. Leon didn't flinch. He simply looked at the architect, then at Victor. I don't take offense at what I do, Leon said quietly. I take offense at what people think it means. No one spoke. Even the architect seemed to have no immediate retort. Victor leaned back. Alina, he said, pull up the interior lobby render. Alina's fingers trembled slightly as she tapped her tablet, but she did it. The screen shifted to a soaring lobby. Marble, glass, a sculpture suspended like a frozen wave. Beautiful. Cold. Victor nodded toward the screen. Leon, he said, what's wrong with that? Leon studied it. It's impressive, he said. The architect smirked like a child watching someone admit defeat. Leon continued. It's also a cathedral, he said. Cathedrals make people whisper. That's fine if you're worshiping something. But if you're trying to build a place where people do their best work, you want them to speak. You want laughter. You want a lobby that says, we're glad you're here, not don't touch anything. Victor's gaze stayed steady. How would you change it? Leon pointed gently. Bring the ceiling down at the edges, he said. Not literally, visually. Warm materials. Wood. Texture that doesn't echo. A place where someone can wait without feeling like they're in the way. A cafe that doesn't feel like an afterthought. The consultant scribbled notes frantically, eyes shining as if he'd just discovered a rare bird. The legal woman looked as though she might faint. Alina felt dizzy. This wasn't supposed to happen. Meetings didn't go like this. Power didn't shift like this. Victor's voice stayed controlled. And the sculpture? Leon smiled faintly. If you want a sculpture, he said, make it something that tells a story about people, not just money. Commission an artist from the neighborhood. Give the city a reason to claim this building as theirs. Victor nodded slowly. Yes, he murmured. The architect slammed his pen down. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You're letting sentiment override design integrity. Leon turned his head slightly calm. Integrity means the design matches the truth, he said. If the truth is people, then people aren't sentiment. They're the point. Victor looked at the architect. You can leave, he said. The room shocked into stillness. The architect blinked. What? Victor's voice didn't rise. You can leave, he repeated. We'll review contractual obligations later. Right now, you're not helping. The architect's chair scraped as he stood, face flushed. "You're making a mistake," he said tightly. "You're going to regret this." Victor's gaze was flat. "I regret wasting time," he said. "I regret allowing a safe design to pretend it's visionary. I regret not asking harder questions earlier." The architect's mouth tightened into a line. He gathered his tablet, his papers, and walked out. The door closed behind him with a heavy finality. For several seconds, no one moved. No one seemed sure whether the rules had just changed or broken entirely. Victor looked around the table. "Anyone else want to leave?" he asked. No one answered. Victor nodded once, satisfied. "Good," he said. "Then we'll do something useful." He turned to Leon. "I want you on this project," he said. "Not as a symbol, as a voice." Leon's hands tightened slightly on his knees. "I don't have a firm behind me," he said. "I don't have staff. I don't have fancy software." Victor gestured toward the screen. "We have software," he said. "We have staff. What we don't have is honesty." Alina felt her eyes sting again, surprised at her own emotion. She hadn't realized how tired she was of dishonesty disguised as professionalism. The legal woman finally found her voice. "Victor, we need to address liability," she said carefully. "If we bring in someone not licensed." Leon lifted a hand gently. "I'm licensed," he said. "Not current, probably, but I can renew, if it matters." Victor looked at Legal. "Make it work," he said. Legal's mouth opened, then closed. "Yes," she said, very quietly. Victor stood, the first time he'd done so in the meeting, and it felt like a thunderclap. He walked to the window, looking down at the city. "This building," he said, "is going to be here longer than any of us. It's going to outlast my tenure. It's going to outlast your careers. Maybe it will outlast the company." He turned back. "So we're not building a trophy," he said. "We're building a promise." He looked at Leon. "You said pretty isn't the same as true," he said. "Show us true." Leon's throat bobbed. He hesitated, then nodded once. "All right," he said. Alina exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Victor gestured toward the screen. "Let's start with the site," he said. "What would you do with the corner?" Leon stood slowly. His age showed in the careful movement, but so did strength. He stepped toward the screen, hands clasped behind his back, and studied the site plan. "This corner," he said, pointing, "faces the bus stop. That means people will gather here whether you plan for it or not. If you pretend they won't, you'll end up with a dead edge and people standing in the rain." He traced a line with his finger in the air. "Put a canopy," he said. "A real one. Not decorative. A place for shelter. And a small garden wall, low enough to sit on. You'll see teenagers there after school, older folks waiting, parents with strollers. It'll look messy sometimes. That's life. That's the city talking back." The consultant nodded eagerly. Activating the edge, he whispered as if praying. Leon turned slightly. "And this entrance axis," he said, "it's too straight, too ceremonial. Make a second path that curves through trees. Give people a choice. Choice makes people feel respected." Victor's eyes were bright. "Yes," he said. Alina watched, stunned, as the room began to transform. The same executives who had been silent before now leaned forward. They asked questions. They listened, not to impress Victor, but because something in Leon's perspective made them realize how shallow their own had been. A young designer at the far end of the table spoke up, tentative. "If we add trees, we'll need soil depth," she said. "The parking level is beneath the plaza." Leon nodded. "Then you design the parking around the trees," he said. "Not the trees around the parking." The designer blinked, then smiled slowly, like someone hearing permission to value the right thing. Victor watched all of it, quieter now, as if he were letting the meeting become something it had never been. After an hour, the screen was crowded with markups, annotations, new layers. It was still rough, still conceptual, but it had energy. It felt alive. Leon stepped back, breathing slightly heavier. Alina moved without thinking and brought him a glass of water from the sideboard. He took it with a nod that held gratitude without fuss. Victor looked at Alina. "Schedule a follow-up," he said. "Tomorrow morning." Alina blinked. "Tomorrow." Victor's gaze was steady. "We're not waiting weeks," he said. "We're not letting momentum die under email chains. Tomorrow." Alina nodded, tapping the note into her tablet. Yes. Victor looked at Leon. Can you be here tomorrow? He asked. Leon hesitated. I have a shift, he said. Victor turned toward facilities management, seated near the end. Fix a schedule, he said. The facilities manager's eyes widened. Yes, she said quickly. Leon's jaw tightened. I don't want special treatment, he said. Victor's voice softened. This isn't special, he said. It's overdue. Leon looked down at his water, then nodded once. When the meeting finally adjourned, the room emptied in a strange hush, like people leaving a chapel after realizing what they'd been worshiping all along. Alina lingered, gathering notes, tried to steady her thoughts. Victor stood by the window again, staring out. Leon remained near the chair by the wall, hands on his card, as if unsure whether he was allowed to step fully into this new reality. Alina approached him carefully. Mr. Rutherford. Leon, she corrected herself. That was incredible. Leon smiled faintly. It was just truth, he said. But how did you? Alina stopped, unsure where to begin. How did you keep all of that inside for so long? Leon's gaze softened. You learn to fold parts of yourself, he said. Like paper. You fold until it fits in the pocket you're allowed to have. Alina felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back, embarrassed. Leon noticed and gently looked away, giving her privacy without making it obvious. Victor approached then, footsteps quiet on the carpet. Leon, he said, walk with me. Leon hesitated, then nodded and left his cart by the wall. The three of them moved out into the hallway, where the lights were softer and the city looked distant through the glass. Victor spoke without preamble. I'll look you up, he said. Leon's face tightened. You can't, he said. Victor's gaze remained steady. I can, he said. I did. Your name is on old permit filings as a consultant. There are mentions. Small. Buried. But they're there. Leon's shoulders tensed. Victor's voice lowered. You were pushed out, he said, not as a question. Leon's jaw clenched. I don't want pity, he said. Victor shook his head once. I don't do pity, he said. I do outcomes. Leon's eyes narrowed slightly, skeptical. Victor continued. You were robbed, he said, and then you were made invisible. And this company has spent years walking past you without knowing what we were ignoring. Alina felt a flush of shame. She had nodded politely at Leon in hallways, thanked him for cleaning a spill once, but she had never imagined he carried something like this. Victor looked at Leon. I can't fix what happened, he said, but I can refuse to benefit from it. Leon's eyes were wet now, though his voice remained controlled. I didn't come here to accuse anyone, he said. Victor nodded. I know, he said. That's part of what makes you valuable. Leon let out a breath that sounded like it came from a place very deep. I don't want to be valuable like that, he said quietly. Like some lesson. Victor's voice softened. Then don't be, he said. Be what you are. A designer. An architect. A man who knows what buildings do to people. Leon's gaze flicked to Alina, then back. People won't accept it, he said. They'll smile. They'll nod. Then they'll find a way to push me back into the corner. Victor's expression hardened slightly. Not if I stand in the doorway, he said. Alina watched Leon's face. A lifetime of disappointment sat behind his eyes, careful and guarded. But beneath it, there was something else, something like a door creaking open. Victor turned to Alina. I want you on this directly, he said. Not as a handler, as a partner. You've been holding this project together with duct tape. Now we're rebuilding it. Alina swallowed. Yes, she said, voice thick. Absolutely. Victor nodded once, then walked away, already thinking 10 steps ahead. Alina stood with Leon in the hallway for a moment. The building around them hummed with normal corporate life. Distant printers, muted phone calls, elevator chimes. But something had shifted, like the air had been rewritten. Leon cleared his throat. I should get back, he said, glancing toward his card. Alina hesitated. Leon, she said, what do you want? He looked at her, surprised. What do you mean? I mean, she said, choosing her words. If you're going to step into this, what do you want it to be? For you. Leon's gaze went to the window. The city looked like it always had. Busy, indifferent, endless. Yet he looked at it as if it were new. I want, he said slowly, to draw again and not have to hide the paper. Alina nodded, throat tight. Then we'll make sure you don't. she said. Leon's lips pressed together. You can't promise that, he said, not unkindly. You're young. You haven't seen how people can twist things. Alina met his gaze. You're right, she said. I can't promise what people will try, but I can promise what I'll do. Leon studied her for a moment, then nodded once, as if accepting the sincerity without needing it dressed up. He turned back toward his cart, and Alina walked alongside him. As they moved, people passed them in the hallway. A few glanced at Leon, then away, as usual. But a couple of people looked twice, as if they'd heard something had happened in that boardroom and didn't know what it meant yet. Leon stopped at his cart and placed his hands on the handle again, steadying himself. Alina lingered. See you tomorrow, she said. Leon nodded. Tomorrow, he echoed. Alina walked away, her mind racing with the implications. Contracts, politics, backlash. But under all of that, she felt something stronger, relief. Like she'd been holding her breath for years without realizing it. And someone had finally opened a window. That evening, Alina stayed late, as she always did, but the building felt different. The sterile quiet of the floors after 6 o'clock no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like possibility. She passed Leon in the hallway around 9. He was wiping fingerprints from a glass door. He paused when he saw her. You should go home, he said gently. Alina smiled tiredly. I'm trying, she said. The project won't let me. Leon looked at the glass, then at her. Projects don't have hands, he said. People do. Don't let a project take more from you than you can give. Alina swallowed. That advice is going to ruin my entire work ethic, she joked weakly. Leon's smile was small but real. Good, he said. The next morning, the boardroom filled again, but the mood was different. There was no smug confidence, no autopilot presentation voice. There was curiosity, nervous, honest curiosity. Leon arrived early, wearing the same navy work shirt, but he carried a slim black portfolio under his arm. Alina noticed it immediately. So did others. A few eyes widened, as if the object itself rewrote who he was allowed to be. Victor arrived precisely on time. He didn't make small talk. He nodded at Leon, then at Alina, then sat. Show me, Victor said. Leon opened his portfolio and pulled out a set of hand sketches. Not digital, not rendered. Pencil and ink, confident lines. He laid them on the table. Alina leaned in, breath catching. The sketches weren't flashy. They were intimate. They showed people, tiny figures in motion, sitting beneath trees, walking through shaded paths, gathering in a lobby that felt warm. The building was still striking, but it wasn't shouting. It was listening. Someone whispered, "Oh." The consultant's eyes shone. The legal woman looked overwhelmed. A designer at the far end of the table pressed a hand to her mouth. Victor didn't react at first. He simply studied the sketches, eyes moving slowly, absorbing. After a long moment, he said, "This," and his voice was quiet, "is the first time I've seen my own company look human." Leon's throat tightened. "That's the idea," he said. Victor nodded once. "All right," he said. "Now we do the hard part. We translate this into a buildable truth." And that's how it began. Not with a glossy presentation or a triumphant pitch, but with an elderly man in a work shirt placing his drawings on a table that had never been meant for him, and making a room full of powerful people sit in silence long enough to hear what they'd been ignoring. Over the weeks that followed, there were battles. Of course there were. The architecture firm threatened legal action. Some executives grumbled about optics, about precedent, about process. People who had never once noticed the man who cleaned their offices suddenly had opinions about his qualifications. But Leon kept showing up. He renewed his license. He sat at the table, sometimes quiet, sometimes sharp. He asked questions that embarrassed people, not because they were rude, but because they were honest. Who is this for? Who will have to maintain it? Where does the sun go at 4 p.m. in winter? What does it feel like to walk in when you're nervous? Where will a person cry if they need to? Victor backed him publicly, bluntly. He didn't frame Leon as a charity story. He framed him as a correction. This, Victor told the company in a town hall, is what talent looks like when it's been forced underground. We're not celebrating ourselves for noticing. We're ashamed we didn't notice earlier. There were gasps. There was applause. There were angry emails. There were quiet conversations in elevators where people admitted things they'd never said out loud. Leon listened to it all and kept drawing. And Alina, who had spent her career translating corporate desires into schedules and deliverables, learned a different kind of work. She learned how to protect truth from politics. She learned how to make space for someone's voice without turning them into a symbol. She learned how to push back when someone called Leon inspirational with that tone that meant harmless. "He's not here to inspire you," Alina told one senior director, smiling tightly. "He's here to fix what you've been letting slide." The building evolved. Trees returned to the plaza. The entrance softened. The lobby gained warmth. Materials were chosen not just for aesthetics, but for touch, sound, aging. The design grew a spine. One evening, months into the process, Alina found Leon alone in the partially built model room, standing over a scale replica. The miniature trees looked like green fuzz. The tiny benches looked like silver commas. Leon's fingers hovered over the model as if he could feel the future. "It's happening," Alina said softly. Leon didn't look up right away. "It is," he said. Alina stepped closer. "How does it feel?" she asked. Leon's mouth tightened. "Like grief," he said. Alina blinked. "Grief?" Leon nodded slowly. "Because I can't help thinking of all the years I didn't get to do this," he said. "All the buildings that could have been different. All the people who could have been welcomed better." Alina's eyes stung. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Leon finally looked at her. His eyes were steady. "Don't be sorry," he said. "Be awake." Alina nodded, swallowing hard. Leon's gaze returned to the model. "And it also feels like peace," he said. "Because for the first time in a long time, I'm not hiding." Alina smiled through the sting in her eyes. "Good," she said. "You deserve that." Leon's smile was small, but it carried the weight of years. "Deserve is a tricky word," he said, "but I'm taking it anyway." They stood there in the quiet, the model between them like a promise made visible. Outside, the city kept moving. People hurried. Lights blinked. Buses sided stops. Somewhere, someone stood in the rain waiting for a ride home. And in a room high above the streets, an elderly man who had once been treated like he belonged in the background traced the lines of a building that would, if he had his way, make the world feel a little less cold for people who were never asked what they needed. When the headquarters finally opened, the plaza was full on the first day, not for a staged event, but because it was genuinely pleasant to be there. Trees cast shade. Benches were occupied. A street musician played softly near the corner canopy, where people waited for buses without getting soaked. Inside, the lobby hummed, not with awe, but with life. People talked. They laughed. Visitors didn't whisper like they were trespassing. The space felt like it belonged to the city as much as to the company. Victor stood near the entrance, watching. He had insisted there be no giant plaque with his name. Instead, the wall near the lobby featured a simple inscription about the building being designed to welcome and serve. Beneath it, a list of names, hundreds of them. Designers, engineers, tradespeople, maintenance staff, community members who had attended meetings. The list wasn't organized by rank. It was organized alphabetically. Leon stood nearby, wearing a suit that didn't quite feel like his skin yet. He looked uncomfortable with the attention, but he was there. Victor approached him. "You see it?" he asked quietly. Leon looked around. The sunlight, the warmth, the people. His throat moved as he swallowed. "I do," he said. Victor nodded once. "Good," he said. "Because it's yours too." Leon looked at Victor, and something in his expression softened. "It's everybody's," he said. Victor's mouth twitched. "That's the point," he said. A young employee approached Leon then, nervous, holding a phone. "Excuse me," she said, cheeks flushed. "Are you Mr. Rutherford?" Leon's shoulders stiffened slightly. He nodded. "Yes," he said. Her eyes shone. "I heard about what you did," she said. "About the design. I just wanted to say thank you. My dad works maintenance at another building downtown. He came here today, and he kept saying they finally thought about us." Leon's eyes went wet. He blinked slowly, then smiled. "Tell your dad," he said softly. "He deserves a place that thinks about him." She nodded, wiping her own eyes, then hurried away. Leon turned back toward the lobby, and for a moment he looked older than ever, because the years were visible now, not hidden. Then he looked younger than anyone in the room, because his hands, finally, were doing what they had always been meant to do. Alina approached, standing beside him. "Looks like you built a home," she said. Leon's smile deepened. "We did," he corrected gently. Alina nodded. "We did," she agreed. They stood together as people streamed in and out, the building alive around them. And somewhere in the hum of voices, the scrape of shoes, the soft laughter that echoed in a space designed to hold it, there was a new kind of silence too. The silence of a room that had once been stunned into stillness by an elderly man stepping forward, and that had finally learned how to listen.